Well, good day, folks, and welcome back to the Secret Solve. Once again, I'm working on this puzzle in the New York area, and I'm just fascinated by this image on page 133 that I think is in some way related to a solve. And again, I believe that the back of the book images can be used to assist in determining uh, solve ideas for the rest of it. And I've talked about this before a couple of times, but sometimes you run across some information that's just so interesting you have to add it to your show. So today I'm going to talk about Audrey Munson, and I'm going to talk about the Manhattan Municipal Building. And she is the person that modeled for this statue. So basically the Manhattan Municipal Building is a C-shaped building. It's down in this general area next to the Pace uh, University. I also found out that in the Woolworth uh, building, that Fordham University also held classes for a number of years, and so this is kind of a education and justice type of area. If you want to use the education and justice for all to see. But anyway, the David N. Dinkins Municipal Building, originally just called the Municipal Building, and later known as the Manhattan Municipal Building, is at 1 Center Street. And I've been trying to wonder if that Central 2 could actually just be referring you back to Center Street. But this building was put up when the 1898 consolidation of the five boroughs occurred. Up until that point, each borough had its own government. But anyway, they centralized government, put up this nice big building on Center Street that's shaped like a big C. But atop this building is this little fascinating uh, civic fame. It's a 25-foot tall statue, and it was installed March of 1913. It's in gilded copper, cast in copper, if you will. It has been variously described as the largest or second largest statue in Manhattan, depending upon whether the larger Statue of Liberty is considered as being in Manhattan. So, if you don't include the one in the water, this is the tallest statue in New York. So Adolf Alexander Wyman commissioned this, and it cost like almost $250,000 in today's money. But it holds the crown has five crenellations or turrets, which evoke city walls and represent the five boroughs. The crown also includes dolphin as a symbol of New York's maritime setting, and it's a barefoot and balances upon a globe. Well, again, I'm looking at this figure on page 133 balancing on a globe, if you will. I see a globe in the other image that is not really Boston, but people say is in Boston. There's definitely a globe in that. And the Globe is the name of a newspaper, I believe. And considering we're down here on Newspaper Row, there was basically three newspapers operating in this general area at one time. One of the World, which is a globe, by the way, the World was demolished, I guess, to put up the second Pace building. The other campus of the Pace University is in the old Times building. And so basically that university has replaced two of them. And this building replaced the third major newspaper that was in New York at the time. Uh, so just briefly, the Woolworth building. I like the Woolworth building because in a couple of the images we have wool sweaters, if you will, and woolen garments. And so why not just tie it all together? But again, the Woolworth building, uh, F.W. Woolworth Company occupied only 1.5 floors. However, as owners, They rented the space out. The building was almost always fully occupied because it was central to Lower Manhattan, and it connected to two subway stations. Uh, the Irving Trust Company occupied the first four floors, and when the building opened, it had a large banking room on the second floor, uh, uh, directly from a grand staircase in the lobby. And there were vaults in the basement. There were boardrooms. Uh, so again, Columbia Records was one of Woolworth's building's tenants on opening day. It and housed a recording studio in the skyscraper. There's music. Hush. Music. Music. Hush. Oh, remember Hush. The Pace University mascot is the Setters, and I'll have more on the Setters later. In 1917, Columbia made what are considered the first jazz recordings. This might be where we can bring Overton Lloyd into the secret, by the original Dixie jazz band in this studio. Well, we have a Dixie Pixie. There's your Dixieland band. Shortly after the building opened, several railroad companies rented space. The Union Pacific, you like railroads, right? The Lackawanna and Western, uh, and Alton Railroad, and the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul and Pacific, otherwise known as the Milwaukee Road, was on the 14th floor. The Canadian Pacific Railway, uh, Great Northern Railway, and New York Central Railroad, Central too, were on the 15th floor. And the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad were on the 17th floor. We're just kind of reading off every single one of the cities that people think there's a secret in. The Chicago and Northwestern Transportation was on the 19th floor. The Canadian Northern Railway, the Los Angeles and Salt Lake Railroad. Told you that was in Salt Lake. And then, sadly, the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Atlanta, Birmingham, and Atlantic Railroad, and the Kansas City Southern and Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroads. This is the site of railroading. The inventor Nikola Tesla occupied an office in the Woolworth building beginning in 1914. He was evicted after a year because he could not pay his rent. The publication Scientific American moved into this building in 1915 before departing. The Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America was present at the building's opening, occupying the southern half of the 18th floor after signing a lease in 1913. Other early tenants were the American Hardware Manufacturers Association. Oh, this could be home ground for the handy Manticore, and the American Association of Foreign Language Newspapers. Colts Manufacturing Company, Remington Arms, Simmons Boardman Publishing Headquarters, and Taft Manufacturing, and the Hudson Motor Car Company. Okay, it's just almost a litany of history of America. And I've always tried to figure out why there appears to be a gun in the nose of this image figure. So if you look at this dark black outline in the image number 12, you look at the nose, and it looks like there's a gun in there. Well, if you consider Colt Manufacturing Company, Remington Arms, both had locations here in this building, then maybe that's the reason why it's in there. Everybody likes the railroading. You look at the image figure, and I've been trying to figure out why there's a little dot in the wave. So down here at the bottom of the image, you have this wave on the last image in the book, and it's got a little dot on it. And I could never figure this out until I realized that the setters, the dogs, and I've always tried to figure out why this image maybe had a dog face. And now that I realize it and I start looking at the onion domes up close, I see there's little dots in there. And those little dots are the noses of dogs. And they all basically look like setters. And if you will start looking at this wave, you'll see a number of setters in there. You just have to get the high resolution image, look for the little dot, that becomes the nose, and then as you stare at it a little bit more, you'll notice all of these different dogs. Well, it's because I think they're trying to point us to this location. All right, these onion domes. I've been looking at the actual shape of what you people are calling onion domes. And the one that's got the biggest, broadest, the big one in the center, I actually found a nose in there. And if you start looking at that onion dome and start thinking Irish setter, look at the onion dome, the very middle one that you think's an onion dome, and start thinking Irish setter, you start to see the face of an Irish setter in that building. Interestingly enough, the 3 or 4 buildings in this area uh, have shapes that are very familiar when you look at the top adorning part of that. So I don't really think those shapes are the shape of an onion. Uh, you have to look at it a little bit more closer detail, and they are not onion shaped. They have a spire appearance to them. And in fact, one of them has a pyramid on top of it. And I don't know which building has the pyramid on top of it, but it's in this area. Okay. Well, the reason I came on and wanted to talk about this exciting discovery is because sometimes in life, you just come across something that you really didn't know. And if you look at New York City Hall, this is basically, this was New Amsterdam's first city hall, and it was built by the Dutch Republic. And if you look at the columns in one of the Ben Asen photographs, I believe you're getting the this building or another building that's right in this general area. Uh, and so I'm just pointing out that this building is also in this general area. But the reason I decided to come on is the Manhattan Municipal Building we already talked about, and its C-shaped Woolworth. Okay, so the civic fame is the statue that's on top of the Manhattan Municipal Building. But the thing that I found that was so fascinating, I just wanted to go live about, is the person that modeled for that particular statue is a lady by the name of Audrey Marie Munson. And Audrey Marie Munson was born in 1891, and she was an American artist, model, and film actress. She is considered to be America's first supermodel. And in 1980, this whole, Brooke Shields, supermodels, Cheryl Teagues, on the cover of the magazines, it was a buzzword, supermodel. And I don't even know if they used the word supermodel back in the early 1900s. But anyway, in her time, she was variously known as Miss Manhattan, the Panama Pacific Girl, the Exposition Girl, and American Venus. She was the model or inspiration for more than 12 statues in New York City and many others elsewhere. Munson appeared in 4 silent films, including one where she was unclothed in Inspiration. She was one of the first American actresses to appear nude in a non-porno. Okay, Audrey, so she was born in Rochester, New York in June of 1891. Her birth is not terribly exciting. They got divorced, and then they moved to Washington Heights in New York. And she wanted to be an actress or a chorus girl. And she did get some early work in The Girl and the Wizard. Always like that. While window shopping on Fifth Avenue, well, that's kind of where we're at, with her mother, she was spotted by photographer Ben Asen. No, it wasn't Ben. It was Felix Benedict Herzog, but there's a Ben in there who asked her to pose for him in his studio in the Lincoln Arcade building on Broadway and 65th. It probably doesn't matter where that was. But she posed for William de Leftwich Dodge, who gave her a letter of introduction to Isidore Conti. And now we're starting to talk about some of the famous people of the time. Well, she became well established as the person to go to for modeling, the Astor Hotels, Grand Ballroom. Uh, you can go around New York and you can run into Miss Munson almost everywhere. Audrey Munson also appeared in the film Purity, and we know that the exploding bag was from the Purity uh, company in Boston. And so I always love it. The other thing about this young lady is that her father was from Mexico, New York. Let's see. No, the thing is that Edgar Munson was a streetcar conductor and Western real estate speculator, and he is one of the original English Puritan descendants. And I love it when you can find an early English descendant to tie a story to. Okay, sorry, I had to backtrack because I forget about that. But anyway, she was in this Purity. Uh, Munson returned to the East Coast after going to France, uh, and went through Syracuse. And she became a high society person in New York and Newport, Rhode Island. There are accounts in which her mother insists she marry the son of the Comstock Lode silver heir, Herman Orlix Jr. Okay, again, at the time, he was the richest bachelor in America. They actually probably never married, but this was one of the things. So in 1919, Audrey was living with her mother in a boarding house at 164 West 65th, owned by Dr. Walter Wilkins. Wilkins fell in love with Munson, and on February 27th, Wilkins murdered his wife, Julia, so he could be available for marriage. Munson and her mother left New York, and the police stopped them for questioning. After a nationwide hunt, they were located. They refused to return to New York, but were questioned by agents from the Burns Detective Agency in Toronto. The contents of the affidavits they supplied have never been revealed. But Audrey Munson strongly denied that she had any romantic relationships with Dr. Wilkins. Wilkins, by the way, was 50 years older than Audrey at the time. Wilkins was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to the electric chair. He hanged himself in his prison cell before the sentence could be carried out. Well, the Wilkins killing may have marked the end of Munson's modeling career, although she continued to seek regular newspaper coverage or uncoverage in many of the pictures. By 1920, Munson could not find work anywhere and was reported as living in Syracuse, New York, supported by her mother, who sold kitchen utensils door to door. Oh, God. A door to door kitchen utensil salesman. Where's Brownie Weiss when you need her? Where is Brownie? Brownie, look, you did not start a door-to-door kitchen utensil sales business, Brownie, with Tupperware. It was this lady, Miss Munson. Well, at least Miss Munson's mother. In November of 1920, the younger Munson was said to be working as a ticket taker in a dime museum. Okay. All right. From January to May 1921, a series of 20 serialized articles ran in Hearst Sunday Magazine. Well, where have we heard of Randolph Hearst? Well, anyway, she starred in a fourth film based upon this pop publicity called The Heedless Moths. So in the summer of 1921, Munson conducted a nationwide search carried by the United Press for the perfect man to marry. Sorry, bachelorette shows on television. Sorry, the idea of doing a nationwide hunt for a man originated in the summer of 1921 when Audrey Munson conducted a nationwide search carried by the United Press for the perfect man to marry. She ended her search in August, claiming she didn't want to get married anyway. And this is how every bachelor and bachelorette show ends today. In October 3rd, 1921, she was arrested at the Royal Theater, later the Town Theater, in St. Louis on a charge related to a personal appearance with the film, quote, Innocence, the reissue of the film Purity, in which she was nude, but not a porno, in which she had the lead role. She and her manager, Ben Judall, were acquitted, but they were in St. Louis, and she started doing several new poses. On May 27th, Munson attempted suicide by swallowing a solution of bichloride of mercury. Okay, we've been trying to figure out for years and 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 years why the image figure has the little dots in the back. Well, if it's a chemical compound, it could be that we're talking about these buildings and the statue of Miss Munson that fits on top of the building called Civic Fame. Fame, I want to live forever. Fame. Anyway, maybe this could explain why in this image, if you take the building to be the newspaper building, now that Preiss School, if you take that building and you add to it the fact that the image on top of it tried to commit suicide by hawking down some bichloride of mercury. Anyway, sadly, on June 8th of 1931, Munson's mother petitioned a judge to commit her to a mental asylum. The Oswego County judge ordered Munson be admitted into a psychiatric facility for treatment on her 40th birthday. Who does that? Who takes you to a mental hospital on your 40th birthday of all days? I mean, it had been like 22 to 31. It had been many years since she tried to kill herself. Here is the sad and disturbing story of Audrey Munson, the first supermodel. Mo Rocca, why have you not done a obituary on this woman? She remained at the St. Lawrence State Hospital for the Insane in Ogdensburg, New York, where she was treated for depression and schizophrenia for 65 years. The first supermodel, the woman who posed for so many statues, whose figure will be seen by men hundreds, if not thousands of years from now, was put in an insane asylum at 40 years old and lived there for 65 years. She died at the age of 104. She often maintained her physical beauty with milk, yogurt, and urine. I don't know if that was all at once or in moderation. I don't know. But there's a guy sitting on a yogurt thing in the back of the book. Okay. Isn't this a fascinating story, if nothing else? In the mid-1950s, Munson was still famous enough to serve as the subject for an anecdote in a memoir that P.G. Wodehouse and Guy Bolton wrote of their years on Broadway called Bring On the Girls. For that memoir is considered more fiction than fact. She had no visitors at the asylum for over 25 years after her mother died in 1958. So from 1931 to 1958, her mother, I guess, visited her along with some other people. After her, Darlene Bradley rediscovered Munson in 1984 when Munson was 93. This poor lady lived in an insane asylum from 1958 until 1984, and nobody she knew came to visit her. In the mid-1980s, Munson, in her mid-90s, was moved to a nursing home in Massena, New York, as the original hospital closed. However, she would often escape to a nearby bar, with employees in the nursing home having to find her. Maybe that's why the police officers are surrounding in on the image on page 133. Maybe that's why the officers are surrounding the figure that's on top of a ball. I don't know. Anyway, consequently, she was moved back to the new mental institution. By the time she turned 100, she had no teeth and lost much of her hearing, but was otherwise in good health. Shortly after her 100th birthday, Munson broke a hip. Munson died on, and maybe this dancing person's about ready to break a hip on that. I don't know. But okay, so Munson died on February 20th, 1996, at the age of 104. Now, I'd love to live to be 104 years old, but I'm not sure I'd be willing to sacrifice spending 65 years of my life in an insane asylum to do it. And that's not to say that she didn't have competent and quality care and a quality life with the people that cared for her in that asylum. She was buried at New Haven Cemetery in New Haven, New York, and she received a headstone on her grave in June of 2016. That was 20 years after she died. She finally got a headstone. Mobituaries, if you have not done a story on Miss Munson, it's time. It's time. That would have been her 125th birthday. All right, we need to read the Wikipedia because I'm not going to go through every single statue that she's in. But the tragic life of Miss Munson, Audrey, will live on forever because Audrey Munson is responsible for over a third of the sculptures and pieces related to the Pan Pacific exhibition. You cannot escape looking at anything at the Pan Ama Pacific International Exposition without finding a piece that she was partially involved in modeling for. And then there's all these other ones. But of interest is that she's in Oakland, California, uh, because of one of the Pan Pacific expedition. She's in Manhattan at the Pulitzer Fountain, Grand Army Plaza. That's her. The ballroom, bas relief at the ballroom George J. Gould Mansion. She's at the Wisconsin State Capitol in Madison, Wisconsin. She's at the Appellate Division of the Courthouse of New York at 35 East 25th Street in Manhattan. She's actually in the Netherlands at the Hague, or the Hague, I guess it is. She's in Asheville, North Carolina. Um, she's in Washington, D.C. I mean, the number of places that you can find her is it's terribly it's there's one claim that she may have not done some of these, but she's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this one called Morning Victory. She's thought to be believed in the MoMA memory. Here's one. She's at two places in Cleveland. She's jurisprudence and commerce at the Metzenbaum United States Courthouse in Cleveland. And that's at the corner of Superior Avenue. She's at the Wisconsin State Capitol. She's at the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow Memorial in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She's the west entrance of the Palace of Machinery at the Panama Pacific Exposition. She's at the Brooklyn Museum. She's at the Frick Mansion. She's at Brook Green Gardens in South Carolina. She's at the Missouri State Capitol in Jefferson City as the Ceres Goddess of Agriculture. She's at the Manhattan College. She's at the Little Theater. She's also been identified as the person in the Three Graces, and that's at the Hotel Astor. She's in the Hudson River Museum in Yonkers, and in the private collection, she's the mother and the child of the bath. I like that one. Uh, so she's at the Pulitzer Fountain in Manhattan. She's at the Wadsworth Athenaeum at Hartford, Connecticut. But interestingly enough, if you go through the whole entire list, she's in Atlanta, Georgia. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. Um, and she's also in the private collection of the Rockefellers. The Rockefeller collection holds several of her pieces that she did. She's also at the uh, Devonshire House in London, England. But anyway, the reason I point this out is she's also uh, the civic uh, one above the building in New York. So anyway, I guess I pretty much talked about the civic thing, and it's got guidance, executive power, civic duty, civic pride, progress, and prudence are the things. And I think that if you look at the shapes in that background, they more approximate these statue figures than they do an onion dome, because they had to basically add the face of the dog to each one of those, an Irish setter, if you will. Well, what else do I have? I think that's about it. But I had to go live today. I was going to take the day off, but I started reading the story of Audrey Munson, and I just couldn't stop. And uh, I, I mean, Audrey Munson. All right. Well, hey, Jeff. Good day to you as well. Glad to see you. What do you think of What do you think of the tragic tale of Audrey Munson? Any thoughts on Audrey Munson? The fact that she lived to be 104 and in stone. So the reason I mention this really is because if you use the verse where M and B are set in stone, and to Congress are as known, L sits and left beyond his shoulder. I think all of those things are set in stone, similar to a way a sculptor would set the image of Munson in stone. Uh, and I don't know. I just, man, every time I see that police car in that image, I just want to go to Center Street and see if I can go dig out a cask right in front of the police officers that are at one police plaza. Yeah, yeah. Good luck pulling a cask out of the ground over there. And for that matter, at City Hall. Here's the biggest problem with the New York puzzle. If you think it's in a populated area, and a lot of the clues lead you to the big tall buildings, how do you go actually get it out of the ground if it's in any of these highly populated spots? You know, there's a nice little triangle in the freeway where a bunch of homeless people are camped. If this might actually be your best opportunity to get a cask in New York City with the arrival of all these quote new immigrants, because all you have to do is set up a tent and bring a shovel, because there's a lot of these places that are lined with people in tents. And why, like these little islands. I mean, I noticed in just the latest Google trip, getting onto the Brooklyn Bridge, there's people camped along these entryways selling stuff, and there's homeless tents set up. And I mean, if you really wanted to be a digger, I mean, unfortunately, probably the place where they're at is probably cordoned off, and they keep the people that are living on the streets out of there. But I don't know. I haven't I have not been in a major metropolitan area for probably 25 years. And I don't know if I could stand to go to New York City, San Francisco, uh, Oakland, uh, Detroit, Chicago. I mean, I don't honestly know if I could stand to go to these cities where all these immigrant populations are showing up. Not for fear of being attacked. I mean, they're just hungry people. But I mean, it's just uh, it's sad that we just can't close the border and not have these people suffering at our doorsteps. Let them suffer back in their own country or fight for freedom and fight for the ability to make a better life for themselves. Uh, you know, but anyway, my point is, I just don't know if I could stand going to these places, and I've never been to you know I drove through Los Angeles one time. I think I got to the corner of Hollywood and Vine, and I was on a sightseeing tour, not a get out of the car and walk the Hollywood fame. So I was just driving around, and I drove back to San Francisco and Oakland, and I've been down to Fisherman's Wharf, and you know, uh, exactly, you could just tunnel under the tent that you're in, uh, if you really had a good spot, and your spot was where a bunch of other people would camp in the tent. Because you see these tent cities all over these major metropolitan areas now. I don't think they let you assemble in the Golden Gate Park, uh, but I mean, even Denver has a large population. But I don't know if I could actually. I don't know if I can actually enjoy time in a city uh, anymore. And I've been to. I mean, I've been to. I live near enough St. Louis that I made a few trips to the downtown St. Louis area. But I lived in Chesterfield for 2 years, and I went downtown St. Louis like four times. To see a ball game, see a hockey game, and one time to go to strip clubs in East St. Louis, Illinois. And I tell you what, I was so drunk when I took off on that trip. I was one of those people that, you know, could have been identified with a toe tag the next morning. Because I don't know where I went, I don't know how long I stayed, and I don't know how I got home. And I honestly didn't even know the people I went with that well. They supposedly lived in the same apartment complex that I was living in. But I met them at a party. They said, "Hey, we're going downtown." I said, "Hey, I'll go along." By the time I got downtown, I was so wasted I didn't know where we were at. I think we ended up in East St. Louis, Illinois. I remember there was girls dancing. They didn't have any clothes on. But anyway, I'm just saying that's the night I could have been dropped off out in the woods somewhere. Discovered by a hunter 5 weeks later. You know, when I was in New York, I was with a group of people and we walked down a number of the streets. And, it's a good thing I was with people, because when I'm surrounded by tall buildings, I need landmarks. And if I don't know what the landmark hotel, what each of the buildings are, people that live in New York can walk by a building at the lower level and say, "This is the Woolworth building. This is the Empire State building." And they can just look at three or four bricks in the wall. And, this is Rockefeller Center. And, it makes me wonder if the one puzzle in Cleveland was about Rockefeller, if we should maybe look at Rockefeller Center as a possibility there. But I don't know. I like my Worth Monument. I like the paddy wagon. I call her paddy wagon. I like some feature that has to do with the descending ball. The guy's obviously calling timeout, and I don't know how you would ever put it in Times Square, but and I don't know how he'd ever be able to put it in the ground down here by the police station and all of this other stuff near Wall Street. But he seems to point you to that in some of the. But Ben Ason's photographs of the. I don't think you can take any of Ben Ason's photographs and turn them into a solved location, because he probably didn't have the budget. I mean, he took some pictures in Florida because he was going to Florida, right? And so And he apparently had the ability to take that one in San Francisco off the back deck of the Painted Ladies, and he had a reason to go there, or maybe Byron took the picture with his girlfriend and had Ben Eason. See, the mystery is, why does Ben Eason have some photographs but not others? And I think it might be because he didn't actually take some of the pictures, but just develop them, and he doesn't have the right to sell that particular image because he was not the photographer who took the picture. And so, like, for instance, I mean, obviously, do you think he carried a scale model of that building to Florida when he took the picture? I don't think he carried the scale model or the sign. I think he added those to that image in the dark room. But I could be wrong. I mean, maybe Joellen made that. Uh, but I mean, how do you take that picture otherwise? Unless you add some of the detail to it. Well, Jeff, any further thoughts? Oh, I agree about the big cities. The outdoors of the West are more appealing. My dad told the story of New York. He asked, "Where is the Empire State Building?" Answer, "You're next to it." Yeah, yeah, that's true. That happens. That's like when I went on a premise visit with my employer, and I was selling System 75 and 85 uh, telephone switching equipment. We were in the equipment room at the client's office at uh, one of the companies in St. Louis, and I said, "Well, can I see the System 75?" And the guy was with said, "Well, you're leaning against it." I hadn't even been to training at that point. It's like that was like 4 days on the job. I guess they were just trying to figure out whether or not, I hadn't even what I mean. I didn't even know what a telephone switching equipment was. Yeah, yep. You're next to it. You're leaning on it. Yeah, those buildings are so tall you can't see any of the features of them from ground level. Um, yeah. Well, I'm going to get on to watching some television today. I guess if you're rooting for the Packers, uh, your season ended. I said they'd get 10 wins, and they did. I didn't know they'd have a playoff game to get the 10th win. I don't. My local affiliate for Fox decided to be off the air and do maintenance, and I'm on the over. I'm on the over the. I'm on over. I'm on television over the air. I don't. I refuse to pay for streaming services or something like that. I'd rather read a story about Audrey Munson, and just I'd just rather read an article about Audrey Munson than watch a TV show. I'd love to watch a. I may Google it and see if there's any YouTube videos about Audrey Munson. But don't you agree? Audrey Munson is an interesting story and a sad and tragic story in some ways. I mean, but anyway, yeah. And then I didn't want to see the Ravens. I honestly, it's football. It's football. It doesn't make a hill of beans different in your daily life if your hometown team wins the Super Bowl or doesn't win the Super Bowl. It's, but I mean, if you want to be in the group chat, uh, if you want to be in the group chat, you want to be, let's say, in the spirit of what people talk about and what people are excited about, you got to follow the football. So, when you get in casual conversation, you know at least who won the game, right? But it none of these players are gonna affect my daily life, and I don't know why I get uh, oh, I've been Munson. Oh, from the movie Kingpin. Oh yeah, that was indeed the character. That was the character's name in that movie. That's right. That's a good one. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Yeah, yeah. Or I remember that from that movie. I do remember that. That's funny. Yeah. So anyway, it's football. It's not important in the overall scheme of things. But you gotta be in the loop. You gotta act like you cheer for the team. I guess this is an activity where you can spend time with other people and have a social connection over some other guys running around and not so much padding anymore and uh, seeing how many times the ambulance or somebody's going to be carried off the field with either a real or fake injury. Uh, oh, you went and saw the Righteous Brothers. The Righteous Brothers. Yeah. Are those guys still touring? Was it the original cast of the Righteous Brothers? Or was it, are you talking about Street Show, the Righteous Brothers? Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I went to the Righteous Brothers Festival too. I watched a couple of other YouTubers and a young lady on their show tell me how I should live my life. Yeah, I don't know. The two shows that are still doing regular programming on Forrest Bend, uh, they say the same thing over and over again, just like I was. I was starting to say the same thing over and over again about the Forrest Bend thing. And the shows that are still going are saying the same thing every week. Every week, it's the same thing. And it's like, just because you say it a million times doesn't mean it's true, Donald Trump. you know, just because you say Nikki Haley was at the Capitol and she was in charge of security during the riots doesn't mean it's true. I mean, uh, the guy that sings with the deeper voice in the Righteous Brothers is an original member of the crew. Well, I suppose they'd have to have one original member, or they'd have to be a tribute band. Hmm, medley. Yeah. So anyway, my point on this is that just because you say it a million times doesn't mean it's true. So you know, I don't know why Nikki Haley hasn't went on the offensive. Uh, because she could, Donald Trump, always attacks the character of the people that he's running against, and one of the lines Nikki Haley should use on Donald Trump in the future is this: "Well, Mr. Former President of the United States, Donald Trump, there is one thing that you did accomplish that I have yet to accomplish in my political uh, campaign, and that is you, sir, had 200 million people tell you you were unfit to be president." That's the line she should use, or however many people it was. However many people it was, she don't even have to put a number. All she has to say is that you, sir, had the most people in political history tell a president that was the president of the United States that they were unfit for the job. The most people in history told Donald Trump that he was unfit for the job. Time for new leadership. I mean, you get if you get two 80-year-olds in the White House, I mean, I'm sorry, my mom's 87 years old and she's still pretty bright, pretty smart. She hasn't lost much of her mental capacity. But I'm just saying, I'd rather have somebody that is awake and knows what's going on than to have either one of those two buffoons. Okay, so I think Ron DeSantis is too polarizing. Uh, all right, well, Jeff, I'm off. Hope you have a good day. I think It's warming up. It's going to be in the 30s next week, so I'm going to get outside and start doing a few things. And I got to put this book down because it's been way too much time on it. And the thing is, there's not that many people even interested in this. I think the most views I've gotten on any of my videos is like 20 views, and it's like, Wow, people just aren't interested in this stuff. All right. Vote for your mother. Yeah, there you go. But you think that's a good line that the Republican challengers to the nomination uh, could say? I don't know. I still refuse to believe that when I went to bed on the night of the the Olympics, when I went to bed on the night of the election, they were saying how it looked like Trump was going to win re-election because he had this many votes. And by the time the election ended, Donald Trump did not have the votes he needed in those key swing states. And nobody is, no, I mean, for the sake of expediency and public outrage, similar to when Al Gore conceded the election to Bush, uh, the country had to move forward. Uh, but I honestly don't think that the level of security, uh, the level of security in our election system with all of the electronic balloting is legitimate. We in our country don't let third world countries have elections that don't have a physical ballot. I don't know why in this country we're allowed people to use an electronic ballot, uh, not have to show up at a poll to vote, and just accept what shows up in the mailbox as being a legitimate vote. I do not understand that. I don't understand that. How can what shows up in a U.S. Postal Service mailbox be a legitimate vote? And until our election system is reformed to where you have to show up at the poll in person to vote, in other words, if you're an able bodied person, we don't have to make any, quote, exception for you to not attend a voting venue and place a vote. If you're handicapped, blind, and unable to show up at the poll, then I agree. We could make an accommodation for that person to provide a ballot in an election other than showing up at the poll to vote. Now, I suppose there's people that say there's no way in San Francisco, LA, wherever, that we could manage a process anymore where everybody shows up to a place and casts a ballot in a 12-hour period, or however long the period is. It's about 12 hours, I think. And maybe there's that objection to using paper ballot, in-person voting. But I think we can do it. I really think we could do it. I think in this country, we could still have enough local people at a polling place managing electronic voting machines that you take a piece of paper that you've signed and shove it in a machine and it tabulates it. Or you go to a kiosk and you type in your ballot and then you hit submit. And you have to physically do that act in the presence of another person. And if you don't have an election system that requires somebody to cast their vote after handing a paper ID, you've lost your democracy. You have totally lost your democracy and democratic process. And those tabulating machines cannot be connected to a public infrastructure. No giant database system available. None. Because somebody could go in and change the numbers. Jeff says he's lost confidence in the election balloting process. Yeah, I believe in my local elections. I believe in my local elections because I can go to the guy that's sitting there at the front of the desk that I hand my credentials to, and I can look at that person. He can look at my name. My name's on a register, and then he can vote. But my mom, my mom voted. My mom voted. Uh, yeah, Jeff says that 125,000 votes for Biden appeared the next morning after, and Wisconsin's one of the swing states. Yeah, but even more insidious is just the ability to go in and change the numbers, in the database from a precinct, and who has the ability to do that, and what qualifications do they have? Oh, they were the mail-in ballots. Well, the mail-in here's the thing about the mail-in ballot not being counted. I think aren't mail-in ballots required to be received before the day of the election? Or I don't know. Each state sets its own rules for how their ballots show up. But yeah, I think Nancy Pelosi's company that owned the voting uh, balloting box. What's the name of it? Sequoia or something like that. Obviously there could have been some tampering, even with the voting equipment itself. Um, I don't know. One of these days I ought to do a show just a political show. But I don't have enough people to get together to chat about it. But you know, how we lost our democracy. you know, we gave it away a little bit at a time, piece by piece. The federal government does not want to work on issues. They don't want to work on our national debt. They don't want to work on our aging defense and military infrastructure. They don't want to work on our gaps in providing coverage to people when they get into the need for old age health care. They don't want to address the rising costs of healthcare premiums. And they don't want to uh, look into uh, all they want to do is fight over the funding of uh, young children whose minds aren't mentally developed. All they want to fight over is whether or not somebody should get a prescription drug to make their tits bigger or to shut the milk off. I mean, you know, yeah. Oh, it's Dominion is the voting system, not Sequoia. Okay, well, yeah, and don't break into Nancy's home because her husband might be home, and uh, if you do, you might want to bring more than a hammer. So, I mean, I honestly think that was staged. I am to the level of cynicism about things that happen that I honestly think that guy is probably living in a beach house in some country that attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband because it was all staged in order to get sympathy for the Democrats. Look at these white people, and they break into people's homes, blah. You know, you know, it's and maybe it happened. I don't know. There's some real crazies out there. Why do you think Jack found the treasure, and then decided to go to Puerto Rico? Why do you think Jack found the treasure and went to Puerto Rico? Did Forrest Ben warn Jack about the nut jobs out there? Is that why he fled to Puerto Rico? I have another answer, but uh, everything that's up is down. Yep. Well, he turned the world around. Okay, well, it's almost 1 o'clock here, so hope you have a good day out there. I gotta go get some lunch. I started going live. Anyway, I'm signing off. Have a good day. Ending the stream.